Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. We begin tonight in Alberta. The Saddle Lake Cree Nation says over 200 children died at the Blue Quills Indian Residential School, and they want to find the remains of their missing children. Chris Stewart takes us there.
It was one of the most horrific residential schools in Canada.
The Blue Quills Indian Residential School operated from 1931 to 1970 by the Roman Catholic Church. Today, it is home to the Blue Quills University, owned and operated by nearby First Nations. The Saddle Lake Cree Nation says that 215 children ages 6 to 11 never returned home from the residential school. Eric Laird is the lead researcher and says they have the documents to prove it.
The amount of missing children is extensive. It can be safely stated that in our community of 12,000 people, each family has had 4 to 5 children who went missing from this institution.
Jason Whiskeyjack is a counselor at Saddle Lake.
We need to find out if there's any more in that area.
The two men say that they have come across remains while burying current members who have passed away.
We came across a small rib cage and attached to a spine, and then more infilling. Came across a small skull.
When I hit a lot of these graves, there's no supports for us.
There's the records.
The band is asking the federal government for help in using ground-penetrating radar to help find the remains of their children and to help with a wellness center to assist in any members suffering from trauma. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
A disturbing discovery to tell you about out of southern Ontario. Police say human remains found in the Grand River are that of a young girl. Emergency responders were called to the scene Wednesday afternoon. The OPP estimates the girl was between 1 and 4 years old and had been in the water for, quote, a period of time. Police say the crime unit is investigating and they will provide an update when more information becomes available. The coroner's inquest into the death of Chantal Moore continued today with video reenactments of the night that Moore was fatally shot and expert testimony that Moore's blood alcohol content was not that high. Angel Moore has the latest.
I'm here at the Delta Hotel in Fredericton, New Brunswick, where the coroner's inquest into the death of Chantal Moore continues. Chantal's mother, Martha Martin, twice was overwhelmed with grief that she had to leave the room both times. Forensic toxicologist James Wigmore testified Chantal's blood alcohol content was equivalent to 5 bottles of beer. Chantal would have appeared groggy, not intoxicated. Wigmore added alcohol induces tunnel vision, and Moore may not have seen past son's flashlight. Lawyer T.J. Burke for Chantal's family says it's important to remember this is not a trial.
This is an inquest. It's not a full examination of what actually happened. I mean, generally in a trial, Officer Sun would be up there if not 1, 2, or 3 days being examined and cross-examined on materials that we would have to present.
Levesque was asked if he had any first-hand knowledge of Indigenous communities. He replied his wife was Indigenous. It was the first time any witness was asked this question. The inquest resumes tomorrow. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Fredericton, New Brunswick.
We want to hear what you think about that story or any of the stories that we cover or should be covering for you. Here's how you can continue the conversation. Send your emails to news@aptn.ca. Leave a comment on aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see all of our latest stories. A new report says Canada's 2 Indigenous departments are spending more but accomplishing less. The Parliamentary Budget Officer's report looks at Indigenous Services Canada and Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs Canada. According to the report, ISC spent $863 million more than what was planned from 2018 to 2021. That's a 40% budget increase. More than they had budgeted, sorry. Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs, on the other hand, spent $264 million more during that same period. That's a 28% overage. In a press release, the Conservatives blasted the Trudeau government for spending more while at the same time failing Indigenous people. When asked about the report outside of caucus today, Indigenous Services Minister Mark Miller said he had not read it. A new Senate report is calling for a review of 12 Indigenous women incarcerated in Canadian prisons. Their experiences were the focus of a report released this week by Senators Kim Pate, Yvonne Boyer, and Dawn Anderson. The review calls out ongoing miscarriages of justice. It found that many of the women were residential school survivors or had been removed from their family during the 60s scoop. It also found Indigenous women inmates spent significant amounts of time in segregation after being labeled dangerous. The Senators' report calls for a review of their convictions and exoneration of all 12 women. It also calls on the government to redress inequities in and beyond the criminal justice system. More than half of Canada's population at prisons for women are Indigenous. Leaders, youth, and elders from across Gwich'in Nation are in Washington, D.C., a push to restore protections for the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. Located in northeast Alaska, the refuge's coastal plain serves as the birthing grounds for porcupine caribou and is considered sacred to Gwich'in peoples in northern Canada and Alaska. In 2017, the Trump administration opened up over 600,000 hectares of the refuge for oil and gas exploration. The Gwich'in delegates are in talks with President Joe Biden and members of Congress in hopes of fully repealing that.
This is our opportunity to really leverage that change and bring some protection to these lands that our nation has been working towards for decades.
Alberta Premier Jason Kenney will find out today whether he'll be staying on as leader of the United Conservative Party, but his critics say they won't accept the results of the leadership review if Kenney does in fact survive.
We will not believe that result. We won't accept it. Our minds are made up. And I'm sorry, but they don't involve you.
Sorry. Kenney has said he'll accept the results of the vote, but has claimed that thousands of new members signed up to vote against him because his government's COVID-19 policies. Many UCP members have complained about the decision to conduct the vote by mail-in ballots after an event in Red Deer was canceled. One expert says Kenney ran for the party's leadership on a grassroots platform, but his leadership style does not sit well with some members.
He's become quite sort of top-down, some would even describe as dictatorial, very combative with anybody that disagrees with him, calling people names, including lunatic and insect. And that's the combination has generated a lot of animosity against Jason Kenney, as we just heard. So the problem for him is he's saying that he's trying to say the problem was the pandemic and that's over with. It's in the rearview mirror, as he said. But in reality, the divisions are very real, and many of those divisions have been either exacerbated by his leadership or actually created by it.
Williams adds that the fact there is an investigation into the process of the leadership vote by Alberta elections and an ongoing investigation into the 2017 leadership race means some UCP members will not be willing to accept the results. Well, if you're looking for Nunavut caribou, you better look to the west because the Baffin Island caribou harvest is over for the 2021-22 season. Since 2015, there's been a moratorium on hunting caribou on Baffin Island due to the drop in the population. This year's total allowable harvest was just 250 animals. Nunavut's Environment Department has announced that they have reached that target, so all outstanding caribou tags are no longer valid and the hunt is over. Every community in Nunavut gets to make their own decision about how much alcohol they'll allow in their community, but one of those communities has taken the unprecedented step of bringing back restrictions that they had previously voted to get rid of. Nunavut communities can decide through a public vote whether to have alcohol, no limits on, or have no alcohol, no limits on alcohol, or to require approval from a local board to order. Every time one of these votes has happened in Nunavut, it has been to remove conditions. Now 66% of people in Kugluktuk have voted to move from open access to the more restricted Alcohol Education Committee, just 3 years after they first voted to remove the restriction. Well, it's time for us to take a break, but still ahead, part 2 of Mary Simon's first trip home since becoming Canada's Governor General.
Ayuineta, which means never to give up, no matter how difficult it is. I remember hearing this word when I was growing up, when people were challenged with different things.
Governor General's recent tour of her home territory of Nunavut was a chance for Inuit to celebrate one of their own. But beyond the cheers and selfies, Mary Simon's 5-day trip was a chance to shine light on solutions by Inuit for Inuit in a beautiful but occasionally troubled region. Here's the final part of a series by Tom Fenario.
Simoni Ohaituk glides his X-Acto knife down a sealskin hide, making sure it stays straight and about the width of a thumb.
And they culture it, they carved it to make very thin rope.
The rope, Ohaituk explains through a translator, is strong enough to make a harness for dogs, and even pull a bearded seal.
Heavy animal.
Ohaituk is demonstrating his technique to a group of young men and boys, as well as one special invited guest, Governor General Mary Simon, who is visiting the Inuit community of Inukjuak as part of her 5-day tour of her home region of Nunavut.
I asked him when and how and why they stopped making a sealskin rope and when, and his response is when we lost our dogs, that's when we stopped using it.
Over the dog slaughter.
Yeah, over the dog slaughter.
As explained in this documentary, Echo of the Last Howl, in the mid-1950s to the late 60s, a government-mandated dog slaughter was undertaken by the RCMP over supposed concerns of disease and population control. Inuit were not consulted before the slaughter, which decimated the traditional way of life here in the community of Inukjuak and elsewhere in Nunavut.
Those hard days when they really admire the dogs and live with the dogs, and when that was removed, the big chunk of their culture identity was removed.
Simon is visiting the Unak Men's Association, where this demonstration of how to make a sealskin rope is taking place.
I don't think there's any other better time to learn from the elders now, because as the elders are passing away, so is our history, so is their stories.
Since its inception in 2001, Unak's mission has been to provide a time and space for their elders to teach. The goal is not only to help boys and young men learn the skills to hunt, but also to instill a sense of pride and purpose.
First started because there was a lot of social issues, first of all, a lot of unfortunate suicides, a lot of social issues. So we band together as men, first started off as a small men's group, and we just grew from there.
Once the hide is cut to a ribbon, Charlie Nakawak and Tommy Palliser stretch it from outside the door to nearly the other end of the building, about 9 meters total.
We have young men, young boys actually starting 9-10 years old, and they've been with us for the few months that they've been with us. They've already learned how to butcher a caribou, how to hunt caribou.
Because of traumatic events such as the dog slaughter, residential schools, and colonization, the Inuit of Nunavut have been struggling with elevated levels of violence, substance abuse, and suicide for generations. Groups like Unak say preserving Inuit culture is part of the solution. And they're not the only ones.
Land's my therapy.
George Hokai is the land coordinator for the Iswassavik Regional Recovery Center in Kuujjuaq. It's the only one of its kind in the 14 Nunavut communities. Currently, they only have 9 beds, for a population of about 13,000. But help is on the way. A new building under construction for 2023 will have rooms for 22 people at a time, not including space for their families if needed. Iswassavik aims to treat addiction by addressing people's past trauma. For Hokai, that means bringing Inuit back out on the land. He says it works for him. He's now several years sober.
It's not like the South. I can't just schedule an appointment with a counselor here. When I need therapy, I just run off to the land and do my thing. Just go hunting and just have space to breathe rather than just dwell in society and just be all exhausted, So I go take off and do my thing out there, and it helps me to live another day, I guess. Yeah.
For Mary Simon, there's an Inuktitut phrase that sums up the ethos of programs like Iswassavik and Unak.
Ayuinata, which means never to give up, no matter how difficult it is. I remember hearing this word when I was growing up, when people were challenged with different things. My grandmother was one of them that said that, and people used to say, Ayuinata, and it's a very important word in our culture.
Meanwhile, back in Inukjuak, the community of about 1,800 has recently seen the return of something long thought lost.
Before we didn't have any dog teams, you know, for the longest time, for maybe 10, 15 years. Now we have 8 dog teams in our community, and these are young men growing with their dogs as well, and providing, you know, for their community. Some are hunting with their dogs now.
Considering that an entire generation was traumatized when the husky population was wiped out decades ago, having a dog sled team now is an act of resilience and healing.
As much as we talk about the difficulties that communities are facing, there's also things that have happened that are good for the communities. And those aren't well discussed, those aren't well known, and we need to make sure that that's part of our conversation in Canada, is that Indigenous people are doing great things.
According to Palliser, those good things Simon refers to are starting to spread. And the last 2 years, 2 communities south of Inukjuak on the Hudson's Bay have created their own versions of Unak.
I think it's going to be important, you know, for all the communities to develop their men's associations, so we can have a network to share our challenges, our issues, and also our ideas on how we can better support the young men.
As Mary Simon prepares to leave Nunavut once again for Rideau Hall, she can at least be confident of one thing. The concept of Ayueneta remains strong here. Tom Fenario, APTN National News, Inukjuak, Nunavut.
We need to take another break, but here's a look at something that we're working on for you.
I'm Charlotte Moore-Jacobs. Evacuees are returning home this week, assessing the damage from unprecedented flooding in the Dene Métis communities of West Point First Nation, Hay River, and Katlodeche First Nation. We'll speak with those who documented the harrowing escape to safety.
Ooh, should I be filming this or should we be listening to the alerts? Because by that time we were told to evacuate by the communication system that they have in place.
As well as leaders on lessons learned.
Nobody can sit here and say they knew what was going to happen, and nobody can prepare for this, and they've tried. And I myself didn't go to the EMO meetings. I'll be at them next year.
That's coming up soon on APTN National News.
Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. This was sent to us by Zerlina Mink. She was able to get this great shot of some geese resting along the historic railway bridge at the Forks in downtown Winnipeg, Manitoba. The banks are of the Red River. You can see still very high there, all because of all this rain we've been having. Send your photos by email to share@aptn.ca. You can be sure to let us know all of the details about your picture, and maybe you will be our next photo of the day. Let's take a look now at tomorrow's weather forecast. To the east coast, we've got cloud and 7 for St. John, sunshine and 14 for Halifax. Inukjuak, 1 with a chance of flurries. Kuujjuaq, flurries, 3 degrees. Saguenay, sunshine and 18. Montreal, same thing for you. 19 and sunny for Ottawa. Sault Ste. Marie, 18 and mostly sunny skies. 9 and showers for Sioux Lookout. 12 and cloud for Thunder Bay. 13 and sunshine for the Pas, God's Lake, 11 and sunny. 13 and showers for Winnipeg, Dauphin and Brandon, both 10 degrees. Showers expected there. 15 and sunny for Swift Current. 13 and cloud for Saskatoon. 10 and showers for Buffalo Narrows. 12 and showers for Stony Rapids. Peace River, sunny and 16 degrees. 11 and sunshine for Grand Prairie. 11 and rain for Edmonton. 8 and showers for Lethbridge. 16 and showers for Kamloops. 14 and sunny for Campbell River. 14 and clouds for Prince George. 13 and sunshine for Sandspit. 16 and cloud for Whitehorse. 14 and sunny for Dawson Creek. Wauatee, 13 and sunny, same with Yellowknife. 6 and snow for Fort McPherson. Paulatuk, 2 and flurries there. 3 and sunshine for Baker Lake. 3 and mixed sun and cloud for New Yacht. Kenite, 0 with flurries. Clyde River, -2 and sunny. A bitter hockey rivalry is about to heat up tonight as the puck drops in the Battle of Alberta. The Calgary Flames will host the Edmonton Oilers in their first playoff showdown in 31 years.
I think it'll be great. I think it'll be fun. Obviously, I think people of Alberta have been waiting a long time for this.
It's not only big for the teams, it's big for the province. So it's probably the biggest series personally that I've ever played in.
Both teams coming off a tough first round that went the full 7 games. The winner of this series will move on to the Western Conference final against either the Colorado Avalanche or the St. Louis Blues. Delegates from Siksika Nation in southern Alberta are on their way to Exeter, England to retrieve sacred regalia that belonged to a Blackfoot leader. The regalia belonged to Chief Crowfoot. He has been housed in a museum in Exeter since 1878. A buckskin shirt, leggings, feather bundle, and a horsewhip will all be returned to Siksika leadership on May 19th. Once they're brought back to Canada, the items are going to be on display at the Blackfoot Crossing Historical Park, where Treaty 7 was signed and where Chief Crowfoot died in 1890. On In Focus today, we talked with 2 mothers who had been on shows earlier this year about the questionable apprehension of their children and the nightmarish hoops that the child welfare system put them through. Since we told their stories, social workers in both cases have returned the children to their parents. Both women shared updates on how things are going.
We're excelling. We're not just surviving, we're thriving.
And this happened fairly quickly after you were on the show, right?
Yes, very quickly.
Do you think that had something to do with it? Like, you know, if you showcase some of the things that child welfare agencies do, some of the problems with the system, do you think that inspires them to do the right thing?
Certainly, it lights a fire under their butt. They can, they know that there's certain families out there that need support, and they're not offering them. They're quiet about it, so all I can do is to encourage other parents to ask around, see what kind of other supports other parents have gotten, and try to get the supports for yourself too.
How are you guys doing now? Like, is everything back to normal at this point for your family?
Yes and no. My 4-year-old has what we believe post-traumatic stress disorder. She's currently in therapy once a week. There was allegations of physical and sexual abuse while she was in the care of DCS. So my daughter has to go to therapy once a week so we can try to correct what the agency had done.
What about the other kids?
For the first little while, they were scared to leave the house and go to school because they were terrified that they were going to be apprehended from school. So it was quite difficult to get them to go to school. And it is still quite difficult. 2 of our daughters still have night terrors. You know, the youngest 2, they'll wake up and, you know, Mommy, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. Mommy, I don't want to go. And, you know, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking.
Well, that is a wrap on your APTN National News tonight. We are always thankful that you can join us. I'm Melissa Ridgen. We will see you back here tomorrow with Dennis Ward in this chair. Have a good night.